It's that time of the year when the monsoons have retreated and the sky in the Khasi Hills is sunny and blue. This happens to be the best time of the year, and we are on our way to explore a relatively far off and untraveled village that is yet undisclosed on the Meghalaya tourism circuit. We moved south of Shillong and passed through Sora on our way to the destination, which is located some 70 kilometers from the capital city. We drove towards Mausmai village and halted for some time to catch a glimpse of the Nosngitiang Falls, which appeared to be a shadow of itself during the monsoons. The waterfall had receded and the popular Seven Sisters Falls were conspicuous by the absence of the other sisters. We moved on further downhill along a rough stretch of road that continued through a verdant green landscape dotted with cute cottages. This road, in sharp contrast to the roads we passed along the way in Sora town, was narrow and not well maintained. After some time, we took a right turn along a sharp bend where a rusty old sign with the name Lat Sohbar village, which was almost faded out on the rusty metallic surface, greeted all of us. This was our stop where we supposedly were to meet a guide. The backdrop of our meeting place was a huge monolithic rock surrounded by miles and miles of greenery. Continuing our journey, we took a sharp turn to the left and soon passed by a few houses further down the road on our way towards the bus station, and then our path opened up to a most attractive sight. From here, the view of the village was awesome. At the center, there were the Ram Krishna Mission School, surrounded by close-knit tin-roofed cottages that were built on the ridge of the hill. The ubiquitous cross of a church, betel nut trees, and almost all of the 150 houses could be seen from a distance. To the east, behind the village, there was a steep slope that probably dropped all the way down to a river or stream. A short conversation with one of the locals revealed a unique religious practice of the indigenous faith of Sohbar village. He pointed out to a huge granite rock just above the road on the hill slope that served as a sacred place where rituals were performed every year following the traditional lunar calendar, which interestingly had 13 months and not the universally accepted 12 months of the Gregorian calendar. It will take some time before I can fully understand the traditional religion and its complex practices. Meanwhile, we headed to the village center, passing some resting places made of stone, constructed in memory of a dead person, and crossed a waterfall.
I'm standing here in Sohbar village overlooking Bangladesh. Sohbar is one of the few Khasi villages in the Cherrapunji plateau which has a rich cultural tradition. Come with me as I take you along to explore this beautiful village.
Sohbar is one of the oldest villages in the region, and it has witnessed many historic events through the years. Its pavements and neighborhood are clean and tidy. The houses are built close to one another, a common feature of the Khasi village landscape. The layout, which were based more on the social fabric rather than other physical considerations. Tin-roofed, small cottages with pretty courtyards were a common feature. After exploring a small section of the village, we were guided to a sacred ground on the periphery some distance away. Walking on the footpath, we noticed some interesting circular stones that were part of the pavement today. Apparently, these circular slabs were ossuaries, places where bones of the dead were kept by members of the indigenous religion.
The Khasis have a way with the dead. What has happened here is this footpath has been built, constructed over an ossuary. Ossuaries are these stones where the bones of the dead are interred here. And this is a traditional custom of the Khasi tribe, of the traditional religion. This is indeed a very significant place.
After the cremation, pieces of bones of the cremated body are collected and then kept inside the stone like containers called ossuaries. These stone receptacles are clan specific and belong to the particular clan of the deceased.
This is the first time that I'm seeing these circular ossuaries where the bones are interred, and this is truly a magnificent heritage site, a practice of the Khasis which is still living and practiced here in Sohbar village.
The technology used to carry the heavy circular stones is still a mystery. Till today, there are several theories, but the fact remains that the oral tradition does not speak or say anything of how our forefathers lifted these massive stone slabs and transported them to their resting place.
I'm sitting on top of this massive circular stone. This is an ossuary, and this is about 8 feet in diameter. When I measure, the thickness of the stone is 8 inches. You can imagine how our forefathers carried this stone here. It's a wonder.
On our way back, we uncovered another unique and interesting story of Sohbar, which till recently was unknown to many. Apparently, the British government in the 1880s constructed a railway line from the plains of Bangladesh up to Sohbar. All of us were eager to find out about the railway line and what happened to it.
Who would have thought that you would find these railway tracks in Sohbar village? These are the remnants of a railway track which existed here in Sohbar, made by the British, constructed by the British in 1886.
The iron tracks were old and rusty, and according to the locals, most of the tracks have been taken by the villagers and used elsewhere. The ones we found were the last remaining, and these have been kept as artifacts of a bygone era. We left the tracks to explore another feature of the village which was hidden from the rest of the world. On the way, we stopped by another monument and resting place where we had a chit chat with some young boys and girls.
SSA, what class are you?
Class 7.
Class 7? You were
Seven,
class
class
7
eight.
kan?
Ni class 8.
Class 8.
Ni class 8.
Sa Sohbar. Bro.
Sohbar village has some 150 odd households, and most of the children regularly attend school. For continuing their schooling beyond class 10, they have to leave their village to study in Sora or Shillong.
Sila kayo.
Skip.
Skip.
There are quite a number of people from the village who are employed in government service, while others are professionals in various fields. Recently, with the advent of tourism, the youth of Sohbar are taking keen interest in promoting tourism in the area. Besides a rich cultural tradition, Sohbar has fascinating sites and places that can attract many visitors. The potential in tourism is huge.
Nakaliang jungi teba ngisngo ba kanigasnong jungi hang ni idakwae kum ki paiba nong song ba ka tourism kan long ka we na ki ba ki paiba nong song jungi hang ni kin yo ban kamai jakapo ese hakabiya day bat kanika surok ba sitaw da biskot kaya nang ni na po song jungi ni kwa ba kani hiru kan long ka we na ki hakaba ki tourist kin penlong kum ka we bakin ya trekking nang ni sathi siya po tharya sathi te kumjuru hakabiya day bat ki taki surok o ki lintiral ki ba mensual ese kadon hagini higi dong jungi tele se halor kini ki ba nakaliang jungi kum ka sinong kum nga kum rang ba sinong lada kalar kan plihi yangi tele se ki pai ba kamtam kami kasnong jungi kalong kabadang don kam sibuan ya ka kamai kaji ban penkiu kam jing lalong ngajing kerku ka bakrao na bantai jungi kum di pai ba nong sinong ni.
A common feature of the area which we noticed in our travel was the clean, neat and tidy footpaths and courtyards. However, what caught our attention was the very old trail that cut across the village. The vegetation had taken over, but the David Scott cobbled stone trail was unmistakable. It is a fact that the David Scott Trail is one of the longest man-made structure constructed in Meghalaya, which this region had never before seen on such a massive scale. This ancient trail probably has no equivalent in the region in those days as far as the length and magnitude of the structure is concerned. However, much of the trail has been damaged, and in some places it has been completely replaced with metal roads constructed over the trail. I never had the slightest clue about the existence of the David Scott Trail in Sohbar. As expected, it was an amazing one. Definitely, there were exciting discoveries along the trail, and for sure, this trail beats all other trails. But I will not reveal too much because you will have to walk this untrodden path yourself if you want to experience the amazing Sohbar Shnonkawar David Scott Trail. There are two bridges along the trail, of which one has been damaged beyond repair, but there is still one which is intact and without a doubt such a wonderful sight to behold. We stopped by this arch stone bridge, a work of art in my opinion, one of the jewels in the crown of the Sohbar stretch of the David Scott Trail.
So I'm walking along this David Scott Trail. This is one of the most beautiful stretches of the David Scott Trail, which runs to about almost 8 kilometers from Wa Row to Sohbar village. But the amazing thing about this trail is that it has these bridges. These bridges used a different kind of technology never known before. And what we see here are the arches, the arch bridge. And it must have taken many men and a number of years to complete this trail and these bridges.
We've moved on to another structure which was indigenous. A pleasant surprise awaited us. It was an unused track, and after a short walk, we set foot on one of the last remaining structure of bioengineering in Sohbar.
This is one of the highlights of our journey to Sohbar village. Who would have expected to find a root bridge, a tree bridge, a Ficus elastica bridge in the middle of Sohbar village, south of Cherrapunji? This is a rarity. If you look at this structure, it is very old, and this thing has lasted for a few generations. I'll take a walk across this beauty and experience the tranquility and serenity of this place. This is indeed one of the forerunners of the Ficus elastica bridges here in Rewar area.
This root bridge is a symbol of the enduring legacy of the Ficus culture of the indigenous people of the War region. It was recent that the local stakeholders have started to restore this bridge, and work is continuing to maintain and strengthen the structure. With tourism picking up in Sohbar, the young men of the village are playing a vital role in promoting the indigenous culture as well as the places of interest in and around Sohbar. From the Jinkengiri Sohbar, we moved on through a betel nut grove, and after a few minutes we hit the David Scott Trail once again, but this time the walk was a more invigorating one. The moss-covered cobblestones, the greenery that accompanied the whole trail, the sound of birds tweeting in the branches, and the freshness of the air all around us was something that cannot be described in mere words. This patch of beauty is the best kept secret of the Khasi Hills, and we just immersed ourselves into the sublime experience, becoming one with the surroundings.
This is a 45-minute walk, one of the most beautiful trails, the David Scott Trail in the southern Cherrapunji area. You can hear the birds chirping. It's such a green place. This is truly beautiful.
The pony trail, which was constructed for horse wagons that were used to carry goods for the British, were aligned in such a way that there were no steep gradient, no steps all along the trail. This was probably the first route in the Khasi Hills that was designed specially for vehicular traffic, and it was excavated from the side of the slope rather than built on the gradient of the slope like the ancient, almost vertical steps of the tribesmen. Further down the trail, we encountered a few old pyramid-like structures made of blocks of stone that had become black and were covered with vegetation. We had no clue about the origin of these structures, but most probably they were either traditional monuments or they could have been landmarks built by the British. It was not only the David Scott Trail that surprised us in Sohbar, but it was also parts of the railroad track that we stumbled upon, which gave us more evidence to establish that there was indeed such a thing as a railway line in these hills. The Chera Company Ganj State Railway was conceptualized by Hubert Kench, the British executive engineer of Khasi and Jantia Hills Division, as there was a need to connect Shillong to Kolkata, then the capital of British India, by rail. It was open to traffic on 6 June 1886 and the railway operated between Tharia, a limestone mining village in Sohbar, Elaka, and Company Ganj, now in Sylhet district, for a distance of 7.5 miles.
We've trekked a long way from Sohbar village across the David Scott Trail to see with our own eyes this, what has remained of the Chera Company Ganj State Railways. This was supposed to link Dhaka, Bangladesh to Shillong, but halfway on reaching Sohbar, it could not be taken any further because of the difficult terrain. So it had to be abandoned, and this is what is left of it now.
It was built at a cost of 8 lakhs. An extension of railway link up to Sylhet was in plan, but it never materialized. The railway continued to run between Tharia and Company Ganj till the Assam earthquake of 1897, in which the tracks were completely destroyed. The tracks were not repaired after the volume of traffic offering were insufficient to justify the railroad track, and the state railway did not have the funds for the working expenses. The railway finally closed in 1900. From the abandoned and damaged railway track, we moved to the Tharia Ghat riverside. The river Waro is an angler's paradise, and recently a bridge has been constructed across, connecting Sohbar to Nongjiri village across the river. We took a short trek across the stony beach to check the campsite which was set up for tourists recently by a group of young entrepreneurs of Sohbar village. The riverside camp is an ideal place to relax and enjoy nature. The river is crystal clear and suitable for water sports activity like rafting and swimming. But angling is the favorite sport and pastime for most locals and visitors. Fishing rods all along the riverside are placed close to one another. There's a lot of fishing going on in here. Men, women, both young and old, sit patiently waiting for a bite. Me, I prefer to walk across and catch a glimpse of the new bridge, which kind of dominates the landscape here. It's a fascinating sight from above. Truly amazing.
Kajing sedang ke jungai ni ke tourism ni ha Waro kalong hadin ba ke hima Sohbar kala ijingai bahkan ka wa kan sudai ka sa tong ka wei na ki wa banong ka tourism destination ha po ka than ora ka jangi ban ha jela Meghalaya hi bro ko wei te hadin jong ka ni ngilai shong da meeting kale hima Sohbar level but ngilai perkhat ba ngila sedang hiban ngade ban sedang ban promote no e ka ni kung kawin ng tourist destination kaya din yung kata ngilaya ay hanga bangin pinyat iya kanika kam tourism hang ni hapo kawa ba Tharia tiga senjam kebanang kong kawanga ngasim hang ni kalong ba ngisdang shu ada ka camping hambangin shu nama kani ka jaka kaba let's say ka kala manangwan hang polion ngisdang shu ban le ki tent bar kini ki touch ko fi imta ki dong touch toilet ki kitchen ki wash place king bro na apply Facebook page ke jengi ai kerteng ka Sohbar Meghalaya tiadin ming apply ya kani ka Facebook page ke jengi ki bon ki social media Facebook page jengi bon ki perlok ki kiba share bun perlu kiba like bun ru kiba tip lang ba kanika Facebook page jangi then nilayo ya ka message ngiyo ka phone call ba kilakwa ban poi pansa siya nika jika ka jangi but ka jingdang hi ka junga ka long bangin kintiu ya ka lat ai kam ajam but ya ka kam yo ai kam ai jam but ya ka jing kam ai jak po jong ki nong song snong jangi kibodon akan ka thain ka jangi ni sa persyang ban ai kam hakilian ka pair hamtam computers guide kinyo ka training professional training ka gyang nang ba kinong ma jo kai thai ki ba poi ha ni ka po pathain sa bar po hima sa ba ni kin hun ba kin so thu shai ba ka tourism ka ba hima sa bar ka dan